Good afternoon, New Bedford Guide followers. We're here with your mayor, New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. We're here to talk about a few things. One, the first thing, Mayor, we have a big announcement, or you have a big announcement to talk about wind contracts in New Bedford.
Yeah. So the announcement's actually coming from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but what was announced today was the winner of the state's first procurement of offshore wind energy, and the winner was Vineyard Wind, which is headquartered right here in New Bedford. And probably to the surprise of many, as it'll turn out, the Commonwealth awarded a full 800 megawatts to Vineyard Wind. Now, people might be scratching their heads and saying, well, what's this all about? Well, so we've talked a lot about offshore wind over the years in our efforts to cultivate it. And along the way, the legislature, through the work we've done here and up in Boston, passed a law that requires the state's utilities to purchase a certain amount of electricity from offshore wind sources. And so that law passed in the middle of 2016, and that law established a process by which each of the offshore wind developers had to bid on the right to do that and to sell to the utilities electricity generated from offshore wind farms. So they all put in their bids, and they said, in so many words, that they would supply electricity at certain prices, and that they would provide other economic benefits to the state. And we've been talking about those publicly for a while, things like training centers and deploying from the Port of New Bedford and doing operations and maintenance out of New Bedford, as well as doing things in other communities around along the coastline. So that bidding process has been going on for a few months now, and the state just awarded the first contract, which was to Vineyard Wind, which has its offices over in the Bank of America building. So this is pretty significant. So this wind farm will be the largest private investment in state history. The record right now is held by the Wind Casino in Boston. This is a multi-billion-dollar investment, it will be, to build wind farms off of our coast. And there will be a lot of activity in New Bedford on the waterfront and job opportunities as a result of it. So it's a big thing. This is something we've been working for a while. At the same time, the state of Rhode Island simultaneously issued a contract, an award to Deepwater Wind, which also has offices here in downtown. It's based in Providence. And that's for a smaller project, a 400 megawatt project. Again, that is a project that will be supported, at least in part, from New Bedford. So it's a good day for the city. It really is. And it's something that we've been working at for a long time, and taking all those trade missions and promoting policy and working with wind developers on waterfront planning, years and years of effort. And now it's going to pay off. And the payoff is a diversification of the port's industries, job opportunities for our residents, and more revenue to the city. So we're really pleased with it. It's a big day for New Bedford. This stuff gets complicated. That's probably my best simplification of what it all means, but it's something that's very encouraging.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll put out a press release here soon, and potentially you'll have like a press conference down the road, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I think we're putting out a statement. It's probably going out right now on this, so but there's a lot more to come.
So what does it mean to the average resident? Just means job opportunity and lower taxes potentially, or from right now?
Yeah, over many years, right? I mean, so you tend to lower taxes the more you build your tax base, right? And that takes time in any city. So people shouldn't assume, well, this means I'm going to get a tax cut this year. It doesn't work. That's not how cities work. But it does mean that it means what we've preached all along, which is that we're doing what we do for the long run, to set the city up well for the future, so that we can continue to grow and the city can continue to offer opportunities to people who live here.
So let's talk, always a hot topic in the last few years, marijuana. So I saw the draft host city agreement for ARL Healthcare. Now they're going to be the guys that are going to produce for the recreational marijuana. So there's a moratorium.
Not yet. No. So ARL already has a host community agreement. ARL is the company that is setting up a cultivation center in the business park for medical marijuana, and they have a pending application for that. With the new law in place concerning recreational marijuana, ARL, like a lot of the other medical marijuana companies, would like to get into that business because I think most people would say it will prove to be more lucrative. So they came to us and said, our host community agreement with the city of New Bedford talks only about medical marijuana and not recreational marijuana. Is it possible for us to amend that? And so we answered in the affirmative. Yes, we can do that. We have submitted it resubmitted it to the city council, so allowing for production so that they can sell, allowing them to sell marijuana to potential retailers down the line, not necessarily in New Bedford, but wherever. So that's why that's there. New Bedford, and it's a good deal for the city because we've maxed out on the amount of money that we can get out of it. We're going to be getting about 3% of their gross sales. So if their sales go up, that means more money to the city. So that's what that's about. It's actually an amendment to an existing contract.
Okay, and I was looking at it, it kind of seems like a phased approach where it was $25 per pound up to $300,000 a year. Is that combined with recreational and medical, or is that $300,000 just the recreational?
Total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of ordinances going through. It's been kind of the start of the year. You pushed some ordinance out to strengthen properties around the city. The first one is a problem property ordinance. So I've written articles on this. Basically, the complaints are going to, if approved on Thursday, will go from 8 to 4. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's is that the end of this, or is it going to keep evolving to even stronger? Because I know me and you've had a discussion where I thought a complaint is not a complaint. Allow TV is not the same as a drug raid.
Right.
Is it going to stay at just 4 complaints, or you think you eventually?
No, I think so. Yeah. So just we had this discussion last fall, and after the elections in the fall, I got together with a number of city councilors, including the new ones, and said, let's come up with a set of ordinances to strengthen neighborhoods. And so it was a good process. We had a really good dialogue with the city council, members of the city council, in advance of announcing these new proposed ordinances. And we had press conferences in the first week of January to roll it all out, and the council passed the ordinances, and they're about to pass it out of committee, and now they're going to go for a final vote before the council tonight. And the council did a good job with it. The problem property ordinance will go from having a threshold of 8 valid complaints down to 4 valid complaints. So that means that if in a 12-month period a property is subject to 8 valid, that please verify that there is some criminal activity on 4 occasions. Any new police responses would have to, the cost of any new police responses thereafter would have to be picked up by the landlord, and I think that'll help on some of the worst properties in the city, and there are fewer and fewer of those all the time, which is good. And then there were provisions like the changes to the clean and lean statute, which requires property owners of properties that are really messy, trash piled up everywhere, or otherwise messy, to clean up their properties more promptly. So those are the big ones, and so the council has supported them well, and I think these are going to help continue to stabilize neighborhoods. We've made progress, especially of late, and I think this will allow us to take it even further.
Yeah, the other ordinance you're referring to is the removal of trash. Right now it's 14 days, once notified, to 3 days.
That's the clean and lean statute. Yeah.
So is that because it was just a problem? It
took too long.
14 days is just way too long.
Yeah, it took too long. So
it's gone trash is sitting
from 14 days down to 3 days. Yeah.
And the other one, and this has been, we posted it earlier today. I got some comments. Some thought it was a little unfair. The landlords was to be posting a sign with their contact information.
Yeah, inside in a common area, in a visible common area.
And those are for non-owner occupied places. You think that's going to help speed up the process of contacting the? I'm guessing that's the reason behind it, right?
That's the reason to track people down. Why are these? Many of, if not most of, the non-owner occupied houses in the city are owned by limited liability corporations. That so that I don't want to sound critical about this or suggest that it's illegal, but it's harder to track down the actual owner when they are incorporated that way. So this will allow us to find out who's responsible for the upkeep of the property more quickly.
So Doreen asked, and this is always a hot topic, is have new internet and cable TV varieties being considered yet? Are there any negotiations?
So I'll answer the second question first, and that is, yes, we've begun negotiations on the new contract with Comcast. There really aren't any others who are terribly interested in it. We've wanted to get FiOS here for a while, and there hasn't been much interest on their part here. Some of it's just a function of the subscriber base and the density of subscribers, right? FiOS tends to set up in big cities, where they have, especially in downtown areas where you can have, numerous customers and buildings that are either high-rise or significant size. It's harder to do once you get outside of big cities, so they haven't had any interest. So we're negotiating with Comcast, and what we want Comcast to do is to provide our residents a fair rate for cable services, and that's been the thrust of the discussions. These are 10-year contracts. They have been, and they tend to take a long time. But my goal is to make sure that our residents get a fair deal.
So there was a WPRI article. It was called "Battling Blight" about taking some of the empty houses, refurbishing them, and kind of getting them to low-income residents. And the city has a program for that. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think people should watch the PRI coverage because it was actually a very positive profile of the city's efforts to reduce vacancies. In the last few years, we've gone from about 200 vacancies down to about 120, and that's starting to fall as well, and that's covered in the piece. We do it through a number of means, some of which we just discussed through the problem property ordinance and some of the other code enforcement that we do. Those are meant to deal with blight. We have a vacant building fund that we build up every year with fees imposed on vacant properties. So if a property has been vacant for a while, it's subject to a fee that goes into a fund that is used to pay for inspectors and other similar measures. And we also have things like, among other things, we've demolished certain properties that we think are irrecoverable. And then we also have a very successful receivership program where we have run with the State Attorney General's office, whereby we bring houses into government control and through a series of funds rehabilitate the house and then sell it to first-time home buyers. That's worked pretty well on a lot of key properties around the city that people would recognize.
So where would people go if they want to actually potentially get one of those homes?
Yeah, so they should call the Office of Community of Housing and Community Development, and they can get information about that. It's right on the city's website.
So we'll talk about our favorite subject, at least mine, judges. So I just want to go over two cases since we've talked last, which has been a few weeks. So 2 days ago, a 36-year-old was found in a car. He's been charged with OUI drugs, and he had over 25 grams of cocaine, $2,500 cash in his pocket. He has 34 adult arraignments. He had an open case for cocaine already, and he had 12 default warrants for failure to show up in court.
Yeah.
Can you guess what his bail was?
I think I know this one. Was this $500 bail?
No, this was a $2,000, so it's kind of high for our judges, right? But $2,000 for a guy who had $2,500 cash in his pocket, I'm pretty sure he didn't have trouble.
There's lots of them. And we had another one this week. Was it 2 days ago or 3 days ago?
The arson one?
Yeah, the guy tried to burn his house down, his apartment building down on North Front Street. somebody, yeah, so some folks would remember when that happened. It was back in, was it January or whatever it was?
This was February 28th.
Yeah, so it was back in the winter, and the guy really didn't have any ties here. You know, he's from Puerto Rico. His entire family's back in Puerto Rico. So, you know, the guy both posed a danger because of his conduct and trying to burn down a building with occupants, and his lack of ties here, which suggested that he was at risk of flight, despite both sets of evidence. The judge let him go on $500 bail, and surprise, surprise, he didn't come back.
Yeah,
surprise, surprise, surprise. Yeah, no, we've talked about it before, Mike. I mean, I'm going to continue to bang away at this because, you know, we have, you know, there were a couple of big issues. The first is there is, by every account of every people who are in that courthouse, even some defense attorneys will say, yeah, you know, people who violate bail are not held. There is no consequence for not showing up to court, or even worse, committing a crime while on release. That alone should be enough to hold somebody pending trial. So you know, our policymakers in Boston have to start paying attention to this. What makes it somewhat difficult is that the district court system in Massachusetts is operating in the 1950s in terms of its capacity to track case outcomes, right? To track bail decisions, to track the sentences that individuals get. So we don't have much insight into, quantifiable insight into sentencing and bail trends. But the reality is that we see this all the time. You've reported on it, the newspapers reported on it, the radio station, everybody's reported on this. We're all seeing this, and yet, you know, there's nothing seems to change. And so I, for one, am going to continue to speak up, but I think we need to, among other things, the state needs to have a real system in place to track track trends so that we can have an honest debate about policy and reform.
If you had to pick one thing, would it be legislators, governor, council? What's the number one way we get the judges fixed? I mean,
well, there has to be some legislative action. I think there should be legislative action, among other things, on state sentencing guidelines, which exist in theory but are really a joke. There has to be some kind of consistency in punishment, and reliability in punishment, so that people start to take seriously the possibility that they might go to jail if they break the law. The second thing is that, you know, there has to be more reform in the bail system. I suggest that the state follow the federal model. And the federal government did bail reform. The Congress did bail reform in 1984, 34 years ago, right? The Bail Reform Act of 1984 said, among other things, forget about bail, forget about having somebody post, you know, an amount of money to ensure their appearance in court. What we're going to determine, we're going to ask two separate questions. Is the person at risk of flight, or is this person a danger to the community? If the answer is yes to either of those questions, the person can be held or released with certain conditions, right? So in other words, those conditions could be you wear an electronic bracelet on your ankle so we know where you are at any given time, or you have to report every so often to your probation officer, or whatever they are, whatever those conditions are. And so, and there are provisions that say if you violate, and it's a serious enough violation, you get locked up. That doesn't happen in Massachusetts state court. So the problem persists, and the problem is this: that very small segment of the population that commits a disproportionate amount of crime, those recidivists out there, are not being held accountable. They're just not. We could make our city and every city in the state much safer if the judges focused on recidivists, but they are slipping through the cracks. And we've seen these bad cases, all the ones that you've named. Sean Gannon's murderer, right? A very prominent example. I mean, like, you look at these cases and you say, what are these judges thinking?
I get a lot of the U.S. attorney press releases, and you were a federal prosecutor. and I've never really seen a bad sentencing at the federal level. Just what I've seen experience in the Massachusetts federal.
No, it does,
judgments.
this stuff does not happen in federal court. So I'm not making up some sort of some sort of fantasy world of how the court system should work. It actually works that way at the federal level. Now, granted, there is at the federal level there is more resources, and there's a lower volume of cases, so it's harder to implement what's in the federal level at the state level, but there is vast room for improvement at the state level, and there just seems to be no movement in that direction, and that gives me concern. And by the way, the judges themselves should be concerned, because every time one of these cases happens, their credibility is undermined, and it is not a good thing for the judiciary system to lose credibility in society. That's a recipe for some bigger problems.
Yeah, I heard there's a recall going on. I think it was a Massachusetts judge near Boston who released a drug dealer because he said he was just trying to earn money for his family. And so I think they're actually trying to recall him right now. So something they're interested.
Well, that's a hard thing to do. So there's an impeachment mechanism in the Massachusetts Constitution that allows for the removal of judges. That hasn't happened very often, but the frustration is very understandable. It's one that I share.
Okay. So we'll go over two last things. There's free parking on Union Street now, and that's due to the construction, I'm guessing, right? Businesses are getting supported.
Yeah, and the construction's moving along. I can see some of it from my window right here. Look, I get it. It's really inconvenient to have a major construction project right smack dab in the middle of the downtown. It's moving along. There are utilities underground that are being replaced, and those utilities are over 100 years old. They have to get done. This is part of what you have to do as a municipal government. And then what's going to happen on top is going to look a lot nicer than what existed before. The sidewalks are getting revamped, bricks are getting laid. It's going to look really nice, and you're starting to see some of it already. We will this summer cut the ribbon on the hotel. That's going to be a good thing. As well, the new hotel on Union Street. So things are picking up, and I think in the long run, those businesses will be well served by this project.
Okay, so we'll end with. So I wrote an article 2 weeks ago called 10 Simple Ways for New Bedford Residents to Improve the City. I figured we'd go through those, and you can tell me your thoughts on some of the points. So number one.
Something tells me I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah, well, I think you can at least talk about the program maybe in each one I cover. So big thing always I seem to ask you almost every other week is the streets and potholes. But I think a lot of people don't know, and I saw at the desk on the way in here, is the See Quick Fix page on the website, and there's an app out there. So people can report potholes, graffiti, trees, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I always tell people.
So here it is, See Quick Fix, and then it comes right on up.
And you can track some of the reporting, even if you didn't report it, it shows the reporting on there.
Yeah, no, look, you just hit report, and then it comes up, and here's the geographic location, City Hall, and then you take a picture, right there, take picture, you take a picture of whatever, and then you send it on in, and it's that easy. I do it all the time. I probably do, I don't know, people probably think I have too much time on my hands, but I probably do at least a half a dozen a week or so. So I encourage people to use it. It works, and it gets the message to the right people.
And you're not the most tech savvy guy, and I just saw you do.
Well, I know that. Yeah, I'm sure I impressed you, Mike. But yeah, it works. People should take advantage of it.
So the other thing I put on here, and people don't know, that there's a task force, right? So if you're seeing things that are landlords are not doing what they're supposed to do,
tell us.
They're here in the building, and there's a website where there's a form, and I put the link on there. Commit the form. So how's the task force? Is this something you created, or was it before?
No, it was something I created. Yeah, it's worked. They have done a really good job forcing landlords to rehab properties and imposing fines on properties that have been let go. So that's gone really well. But they need to know what's going on. From time to time you hear about people posting, messes on Facebook or potholes on Facebook, and then people are asked, well, did you call anybody in city government? Well, no, I wanted to put it, well, why don't you call us? We won't know unless you tell us. So, reporting is half the battle.
So Chief Cadero is one of my favorite guys in the city. He always talks about if you see crime, report it. But it seems obvious, but it isn't as obvious in a city that's sometimes called the secret city.
I don't use that term, Mike, but
You see it on social media a lot, and some will tell you
I never quite figured out what that meant, but...
So there's two things that I've seen, and there's a positive and a negative. One is there's so much talent here that's hidden that it's a secret, and the other one is the stitches get snitches, so people don't report crime. That's kind of the thing out there.
I shouldn't do that. But the police, in the case of crime, or DPI, or other city departments in the case of constituent issues, potholes, and everything else, they can't do their job unless they're getting information.
The other one is, and a lot of people don't know about this, I talk about it a lot with Chief Cadero when I have a show with him, is if you have external cameras in your house, you can actually put it into the database for the police. So if a crime happens in front of your house, the police can ask you. You're not forced to give them the video, but at least you're on their database, they know to ask you. Yeah,
let them know that you have a camera. And it has, so private, the video that the police have gotten off of private cameras in this city have solved lots of crimes, including homicides. So,
is there any better evidence than video?
No, as any prosecutor would tell you, you can't cross-examine a tape, right? It's there, it speaks for itself.
Now, there's about a dozen neighborhood associations, and I've listed them on the article. I mean, people need to get involved with it's the lowest level of, it's not really government, it's the lowest level to get your complaints heard, and those people are usually well connected, and they talk to the legislators and the mayors and that kind of stuff, right? So
yeah, I mean, elected officials pay attention to the neighborhood association, so it's a good way to get issues aired, but it's also a good way to connect with your neighbors and know what's going on around you. Yeah.
And city council, they do besides the ordinance committees and that stuff, they actually have a meeting once or twice a month. So I list here's where you can call them all, get in touch with them, come in there, meet, shake your hands, and it's a way to get directly feedback to people that actually act, right? So these are the people that write our ordinances, legislation, approve, send you a budget, and those kind of things. Number 7, Operation Clean Sweep, one of the best programs in the city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You get free food.
You usually do. If you're looking at carbo load, you can get some Domino's Pizza. Nelson Hockett Lots usually supplies it for Operation Clean Sweep reliably.
And I don't know if you knew this, but there's a website called volunteermatch.org. I put in, it's a way to find volunteer opportunities in your city. I put New Bedford, and there's 164 opportunities to volunteer in your community.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, at least that. Yeah, no, there are all sorts of ways. I mean, just think if everybody in the city just picked up, just kept really neat and orderly the area right in front of their homes, the city would look even better. I mean, the look of the city's improved a lot over the last few years. So, we've eliminated graffiti. It's much harder to find now than it used to be. And the trash has certainly gone down. The amount of volume that folks at Operation Clean Sweep pick up has gone way down. They'll tell you that. But we still have room for improvement. So but we need everybody to be pitching in.
And number 9, I put attend office hours with your mayor. So you bought pizza last time?
I did. Next time we're at Me and Toyo on South 2nd Street, their new place. And Javier Rojas, the owner, is a great guy. Makes really good nachos, and so that might be what's in store for the mayor's office hours.
So, and I say this to anyone I can is, you're accessible on WSM, you're accessible here. A mayor can't meet with every citizen who has to talk about trash or whatever. So these are great ways to get involved, improve your city, and you do hold office hours, and they're not always heavily attended, right? But if you complain and you got to complain, you can come see your mayor. And the next one, or is there one coming up?
It's Tuesday.
This Tuesday?
I think.
Next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll post that up because usually that gets sent out. So we'll send that out there. So that's it. I appreciate your time, Mayor Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, in my State of the City, there's, we want people just to show up. Showing up is half the battle. Show up, whether it's, and even in the slightest ways can go a long way to making the city a better place.
Yeah, I think apathy is a cancer to any city or town.
Anybody can complain, right? It's easy to complain. When you complain, it's always it's left to somebody else to fix, right? But everybody stepped up a little bit, things would solve themselves pretty readily.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Mitchell.
All right, Mike, thank you.